I started in 64, 65. That was my year on the freshman team. And it just so happened that the 5 of the top 6 players from Mission that won the high school championship that year all came to UBC. So our starting team was 5 Mission guys and me. They would not let me touch the ball. And the reason was, is as soon as I touched it, the referee would blow his whistle, because that was back in the days where first all contacts were overhand, digging, setting, everything. I think when the dust settled, there was 3 guys from Mission on our 66-67 team.
We won the first ever CIAU championships, which then became CIS, now U Sport. But that was the very first official, and UBC, that team won it, so that was very memorable. And of course, in those days, if you won the university championships, that allowed you to qualify for the Universiade. And it wasn't sort of like now where you have a national B team that trains and goes. It was actually the winning university team that qualified. So of course, going to Tokyo and seeing a whole different brand of volleyball, which we like to think we brought back to Canada, I would say even North America, that was very memorable. I mean, that was the key for that particular year for me.
The effect that we had on the country didn't take place until after we experienced our last experience of that year when we went to the World Student Games in Japan. And that's where we saw the Oriental style of volleyball. It was just like, whoa! People were running all over the place. They had plays. It seemed like they had 6 hitters coming at you all the time. And we only had 2. And we couldn't wait to get back to Canada and start to learn all this stuff. And that's what transpired the next year, is that at UBC, under our same coach, Eric, we were madly trying to figure out how to do all this stuff.
It was a challenge to play against a team like that ran such a quick offense, that were running quicks in the middle and quick back sets, because no one else did that. The game in that day was high balls to the outside, and you went up and you pounded it. Therefore, in terms of blocking, in terms of playing defense, you always had lots of time to set up and do things. With these guys, you didn't. You had to be able to react a lot more quickly. And it took people time to adjust to that.
I get stories today still where people literally would tell us they were in the same tournament as we had. They didn't make the championship final, like the top half of the tournament. They were in the bottom half. They would literally throw their first consolation match and run to the schedule to see where we were playing and run and watch us, because they couldn't believe how much fun we were having and what the hell we were doing out there. It looked so exciting. So that's the effect that we had on the rest of the country. Well, I know one story was almost tragic. There was a Olympic festival going on in Calgary, multiple sports, all different intercollegiate sports and stuff like that. Ken and a couple of other players he lives in Winfield. So they were basically driving to meet the plane, or the train. I think we're meeting us in Castlegar, because we stopped at Mission on the way through, and the Mission players got on the train, and boxes and boxes of food from the parents and stuff like that, which was just great. And so when we got to the next stop to meet these other guys, we found out the story.
I remember Ken was driving, it was his Volkswagen Beetle. I was in the passenger seat, and John Bayless, he was in the back seat, all kind of wrapped up and tucked in, which was a good thing, with luggage. So John was sleeping, I fell asleep, and then obviously Ken fell asleep. We're driving up a steep hill outside of Summerland, I believe it was, and on the right-hand side, and there wasn't much of a barrier, there's ocean off a bit of a cliff. On the left-hand side, there's a ditch. Fortunately, or unfortunately, but more fortunately, Ken drifted to the left-hand side of the road, went into the ditch. So I kind of woke up rolling in the car, and I went through the windshield, had a bunch of stitches. Ken, who didn't know at the time, he actually had a couple of cracked ribs from the accident and ended up playing regardless a lot of games that particular weekend, and then had to get treatment for his cracked ribs. He found out at the tournament that his ribs were cracked, but still had to play through it because he was one of our starters and we needed him out there. But it was scary. Fortunately and unbelievably, we all got through it. John was okay, a little shaken up, a little bit of shock, kind of woke up in the back seat after the car came to a stop, and what happened? But yeah, that was quite an accident, and fortunately everything worked out all right. Gentlemen, my pleasure to welcome you as inductees into the Hall of Fame, and congratulations for this particular result. Well deserved. Thanks a lot, guys, for being a part of that team.
I'm Ken Witzke, known as the driver. There's a lot more to the story than you heard tonight, and perhaps next year I'll give you my version. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, fellow athletes, and any wannabes in the crowd. My teammates selected me to say a few words about our coach, Eric Lessman. Keep it to a minute or less, they said. Those were my instructions. At this stage of life, it takes me 30 seconds to take a deep breath and gather my thoughts, and another 30 seconds to recall what I'm supposed to do. We are talking about a period of time 50 years ago. I like to think of it as a mere half century. The first time I saw Eric and his mesomorphic stature was at the Burrard YMCA, where a number of us worked out in a weightlifting gym. The Y also had a small indoor volleyball court, and he, Eric, was playing with a nondescript group of amateurs. Needless to say, he did not have the grace of a Russian ballet dancer, but would have looked more at home in a Viking helmet. The next time I saw Eric, a week or two later, was at the War Memorial Gym, UBC, and he was going to be our coach. First memories are of his big smile, which over time proved to be a constant characteristic. Add to this the qualities of energy, reliability, good humor, encouragement, optimism, discipline, motivation. On the other side, there was never sarcasm or demeaning comments or negativity in any form. This atmosphere allowed the development of a real synergy in our team. This was a basis for our success that we achieved. There were rare moments when we might not have won a set or a match, but we were never defeated. He is here tonight, an integral part of our psyche, and will continue to be so ad infinitum. Please, teammates, and anyone from that early era familiar with Eric, I was going to say raise your glasses in a toast, Eric Lessman, coach extraordinaire. But let's just say, well done, Coach Lessman. Well done, Coach Lessman. For the record, that was 59 seconds.
Great. Hi, my name's Kit Fortune. I was a setter on this UBC team, UBC Thunderbirds. First, I want to convey our thanks to Volleyball BC, to the Hall of Fame Committee, Bethany Took, Adrian Goodmurphy, Ian Esplin, Dorami Ailing, Boris Tyzuk, Tom Jones, other board members, and Chris Densmore, as well as UBC Athletics for their support, and my teammates Dale Oman and Mike Rockwell, who really made this night happen. And Vic Lindell. Where's Vic? There you are. Hi. Just over 50 years ago, in 1966-67, this UBC Thunderbirds team, standing behind me, as mostly 20 and 21-year-olds, we had an amazing year. You heard some of that at the beginning, of what we did that year. Some of my thunder's been stolen because of the already, you've heard, but we won the first National University Championship, the Western Open champions. We became National Junior champions. We were all pretty young. What wasn't mentioned is 6 of us also went on to help win BC gold at the first ever Canada Winter Games in Quebec City in '67. But the highlight that year for all of us, I think, was being selected to represent Canada in the 1967 Tokyo World Student Games, the Universiade, which actually is second only to the Olympics in size. Now, 1967 was the summer of love. Hippies, the Vietnam War protests, psychedelic drugs, the Beatles' Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. That's how far back we go. We weren't flower children. We were clean-cut volleyball players. Look at us. Just imagine looking at us. But unknown to us at the time, we were about to create our own piece of history, a legacy for Canadian volleyball. In Tokyo, as has already been mentioned, we were exposed to a new Asian style of volleyball, very different from the slower, safe European. I mean, safe sounds kind of negative, but it was very powerful, but it was a safer style that we were used to playing. So when this new style that we encountered, that Dale eloquently described, which was exciting, was sometimes called the fast attack. And it was introduced in Japan, and it was a quick attacking, multiple option offense. It had finesse and was at much higher risk, really. All of the teams that we played there at the Universiade played the same style. And we were blown away, as I think you've already been told. In Tokyo, we began by arriving to a sold-out Olympic stadium with 60,000 people, fans, for the opening ceremonies. We proudly marched in. Actually, sorry, can we have that? No, the one before that. Yeah, this was us standing, waiting to enter the court in the Komazawa Volleyball Center to play in these university games. But we're all pretty clean cut, if you can see. But, okay, next one. We proudly marched in our bargain basement candy cane striped baggy Canada jackets, white pants, and bow ties. It kind of reminded me, and I think a lot of us, my own thing is, we look like ice cream vendor clowns. And the bizarre hats. I wasn't sure what kind of hat it was. A fedora? So then I Googled it, and I saw that it was called Tyrolean, an Austrian mountain climber beer hat that Canada had provided us. And of course, we were all waving Japanese flags. Somebody asked me, why were you waving Japanese flags? I don't remember. But somehow it was a way to make a kind of, friendly gesture to the crowds. I think we were the only ones who did it at that year anyway. I think we look really goofy, actually, especially when we enviously compared ourselves to the British team who followed us. You'll see them in the back there in their sharp, elegant, classical navy blue crested suits with mini skirts even in the day. We felt like poor country cousins, I think. However, probably because of our unusual, colorful look, we made the cover of a Japanese magazine, which is what this was. You know, holding our Tyrolean hats and waving to the crowd. You know, good Canadians, right? They loved us. Then we had days in Tokyo. We walked the streets and we were towering above all this diminutive Japanese, we thought. They were just very, very short. And we thought, well, even if that Japanese team that we've kind of heard a bit about is fast, at least we'll be taller. And I remember our shock later at the Komazawa Olympic venue when the Japanese team entered. They were gigantic. Yikes. The rumor was that a number of these giants were recruited from some outpost of Hokkaido, a northern Japanese island, and they were brought to learn the game because they were huge, they were gigantic. As we actually lined up in the court on the sideline, and you saw the earlier picture, a gatekeeper had turned and looked at Vic. Vic is right here. Could you hold your hand? There's Vic. You'll notice that we're all white guys, except for Vic. The gatekeeper, thinking he was on an Asian team, did a double take when he saw Vic, and he said, "Oh, no, you're in the wrong place. You're on the wrong team. You can't be here." Vic protested, but he refused to believe him that he was on our team. Confusion ensued. Coach Eric rushed over, apparently. I mean, I didn't see this exactly, but convinced the fellow to let Victor on the floor with us. How times have changed. In our game against Japan, that later in that incident, there was one 6'5" power hitter. He wasn't even the tallest, right, Dale? There was even taller ones than that. Our tallest guy was Dale at 6'4". Vic was 6'2". That was it. This guy was named Marita, and he was killing us with his thunderous middle spikes. Block that guy, was what was going on. But we just shook our heads, holding out our hands, saying, this guy is a foot above our blocks. This guy was just power. We hadn't seen anything like that before. We finished sixth, which was respectable. The gold medal went to this Japanese team, the same team that would go on to win the gold at the 1972 Olympics in Munich. So we were up against something pretty powerful. On our return, as you've already been told about, we introduced this revolutionary brand of volleyball that we were exposed to. And it changed how volleyball was played across the nation, and arguably North America. And really, this approach, as Mike had said, has now become the world standard for men's and women's volleyball. And Dale mentioned that there was a player that he knew that had confessed that they would run to see us play this crazy style of volleyball when they didn't have to play a serious game. Anyway, just to come to the end, we had many amazing experiences in Japan, like the wonderful traditional Japanese public baths.
Co-ed.
We actually had one of these very hot, big, beautiful baths in the Olympic Village. And you could just go wander down, and they were searingly hot, these baths. And you would wash on these little plastic stools, and then you would get in. It was beautiful. It was really cool. It's very much an institution in Japan. And we were also being around other notable Canadian athletes, like world-class runners like Abby Hoffman, who is a female athletic pioneer and still is around in a high level as an activist. Dave Bailey, who was co-captain with us. He was the first Canadian to break the 4-minute mile, which, if you remember, the 4-minute mile was broken here in Vancouver in 1954, I think.
Broken in England in 54 and broken again
Here, what year? 54. The British Commonwealth Games out at UBC and then Empire Stadium. It's famous because there's a statue. But this guy was the first Canadian over 10 years later. It took that long. And also at that Games was fascinating. Tommy Smith, a U.S. sprinter, one of the 2 sprinters who in 1968 gave the Black Power salute. He was also, we were kind of rubbing shoulders with people like that at the Olympic Village, which is where we were. Anyway, so to close, we were homegrown Lower Mainland and BC kids who fundraised by knocking on doors to get to Tokyo. We didn't have a lot of funding coming from federal athletic things. We did it ourselves to get there. And we came together, we had fantastic chemistry as a team, and we helped change how the North American game would be played forever. That's all I can say.